This video is my reaction, albeit somewhat delayed, to the Ravens Stadium practice Sunday afternoon, and also with some of my observations and the things that I just thought were most interesting and compelling from the practice. This was a really great demonstration, I think, of just how much talent there is on the roster. When you look at some of the drill periods and you see who's competing against one another, you can just imagine it's quite easy for these two sides, the offense and the defense, to make themselves better. One thing that definitely needed to improve was the initial stream, right? It was without audio. A little disappointing to begin. It caused the live chat on the Ravens YouTube channel to just explode. I mean, it kind of reminded me of like if you're watching an MMA or boxing match live on a stream. Not saying that I've ever done so, but the chat will explode when someone gets knocked out. Like no audio, can't hear shit. Turn the mic on. I can't hear anything. They did get it fixed eventually. It was like 18 or 19 minutes in. It was really fun to watch, to be honest with you. Kind of a precursor or appetizer, if you will, to Thursday's preseason game and the two joint practices against the Colts. Uh, I think the second string defense just annihilated the backup offense at times. There's a lot to talk about and appreciate for me. Lamar's touchdown on the wheel to Henry, first of all, it was against Trenton Simpson. There's a pick, rub, screen, whatever you want to call it, that makes it more challenging for Simpson to try to cover because Kirkwood is doing a nice job of screening him off. We've been called for offensive pass interference on that concept before for less than occurred on that play. I'm certainly not saying that Kirkwood should be called for it, but I've seen it occur in basically Isaiah Likely against the Miami Dolphins in 2023. A couple of guys I want to mention here first. Kyle Hamilton looked like a destroyer. I mean, he showed up everywhere, right? Near the line of scrimmage, as a blitzer, in coverage. He just seemed to be ahead of the game with every single time that the camera panned to him. It's tough sometimes in these joint practices. You get this, excuse me, in this stadium practice, you get a camera angle that doesn't really show the defense pre-snap, right? And then suddenly the ball arrives somewhere, and Kyle Hamilton's like Jason. He's just suddenly there, and you have no idea how it occurred. The blitz where he was free and would have been in a situation to possibly try to sack Lamar. First, we wouldn't want to see that. We wouldn't want to see that matchup. But the sadistic side of us as football fans, or of me anyway, would like to see, okay, could he actually bring Lamar down, or would Lamar get rid of him like he does every other regular human, even in an NFL situation? Mike Green, another guy, just alien level athleticism, but also sharp technique, skills, along with the athleticism and burst and explosiveness is a real asset right now, if you ask me. He's got great size too. He's wide with the pads on. He almost looks like he has old school like NFL old school pads on, if you ask me, compared to some of the other guys that are really wearing super small pads. I'm incredibly excited to see Green out there and attacking. He looks like a guy that plays downhill, not just against the pass. I mean, he looked the part, in my opinion. I'm just going to offer some brief comments on certain players and situations initially, and then talk about some of the way the practice flowed and the way that it appeared to be organized to me. Tyler Loop, smooth and strong. That 60-yarder was nasty. Ken from Film Study Ravens put out on Twitter that apparently Loop hit a 66-yarder pre-practice, which is pretty unbelievable. But the 60-yard field goal that he did convert was during the time, I believe, where there's no audio. So we didn't hear how far out it was. Now, of course, you could see where the ball is spotted, where the holder, Stout, is situated. Based on the trajectory of the ball and the height that it had when it still crossed the uprights, looked like a 51 or 52 yarder. I even asked, we were dual watching or group watching the stadium practice in our Ravens Discord, and I even asked a couple of guys, I was like, how far was that from? One guy rewound a little bit and said that was 60. It didn't look like 60. That didn't look like a 60-yarder. It looked like it would have been good from 66. Anyway, I also thought the GoPro on him was cool, being angled down, to catch the kick. I suspect or wonder if the rationale behind the GoPro and the angle of it is such that it's to focus on a part of his body and not necessarily just his foot. If you look at the angle of the GoPro or whatever the technology is that they had on him, being as it's 90 degree towards his helmet, essentially parallel to the ground, when he looks down at his spot to kick, it's going to be angled even further. So I'm wondering what they're actually looking at there. I wonder if they even catch a lot of the spot. It almost looks like to me, my suspicion is that they're working on something specific with him, maybe the angle of his leg and how things are situated with his body, his lower half upon contact, something that they wanted to record. Anyway, talk about a couple of other guys. The throw from Lamar to Kirkwood, the one against Alexander up the left sideline. That's not just a great throw. I thought Alexander was all over him, right? And Kirkwood looked great last year in preseason. He looks like a player to me, along with Anthony Miller, who, if we had to put out there in the regular season because of injuries, we could do okay with. He's a guy that could get things accomplished. Maybe not getting great separation from a top of the line elite corner like a Jair Alexander, but when Lamar puts the ball in that location, Kirkwood with his big body, his big frame, long arms, able to go get it along the sideline. Spectacular throw. Lamar looks ridiculously confident. So many things to mention. And this one that I'm going to is maybe a little bit unusual or from a different angle, right? You've got the location of the throws, the accuracy, the pace of them, meaning is it the right speed on the ball? And when you look at his throws compared to Rush and Leary, it's totally unfair to compare them in any way, shape, or form. But for Lamar, that one thing that really I notice here today is the timing of his throws, the timing of his release, and when the ball arrives compared to the route. It's incredibly well timed. It almost reminds me a comparison that I thought of while watching the stadium practice live was synchronized swimming. Unbelievable to watch him throw the ball. And then, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but watch Leary and Rush go out there immediately, the next snap, the next play, as the first string and second string and even third string guys rotate in. It's truly elite, just a large difference, vast difference between those guys. I mean, maybe one throw by Lamar was maybe 2 feet on the wrong side of the receiver based on where he would have probably wanted it. The wheel to Derrick Henry against Simpson, perfect location, pace, but timing as well. And when I use this word here, it's meant to be complimentary, robotic, meaning he doesn't miss. A form of robotics that is incredibly accurate down to less than 1/100th of a millimeter, and R is all over it with his throws. I think we're in an incredibly special place with the offensive personnel. Lamar, Derrick Henry, the group of wide receivers, the tight ends, likely, of course, wasn't out there on the field today. They play well together. There was a moment, one of the time periods, 7-on-7, most people call it. I call it Pass Skelly. As a coach, that's what we refer to it as. But I noticed the talent level on the field during that time period. It's the first Pass Skelly, right end zone on the screen. Offense would have been going left to right. Down inside the 10, I think is where it originated. The quality of players going against each other was just remarkable, in my opinion. I get it that, we want to talk about players, but the collection of talent that was on the field competing against each other, I want to discuss because those guys really seemed to get after each other, even though, yes, they're in full pads. So they weren't just in shells. There was nothing dirty at all about today, but guys were playing right up to the line that had been established today. What percentage they gave the guys to apply in terms of contact, but Hopkins, Bateman, Andrews, Henry, Lamar on one side, right, along with Keaton Mitchell, Justice Hill, Mark Andrews, Charlie Kolar, and we're facing off against Marlon Humphrey, Roquan, Kyle Hamilton, Wiggins. There's no D-line or offensive line in this period that I'm describing, Paskelli or 7-on-7. But the totality of the high-level players out there on that field against each other was noticeable to me, and we talked about it in the Discord a lot, a couple of guys. We were impressed, and something I wanted to offer to you that we should appreciate because it hasn't always been like this, and it isn't across the NFL. I think that the Baltimore Ravens collection of position player talent, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, along with the quarterback, but even independent of Lamar, the collection of talent we have at position player is truly as high as it gets in the NFL. I would put our position player talent up against any team in the NFL. A couple of random observations and some that may go a little off center or off base from what you notice or most people talk about. I like the organization of things. We shouldn't be surprised, right? It's the Baltimore Ravens, a billion-dollar high-level football organization. When they're doing the inside run period, just to talk about how it's structured and one of the considerations that coaches have, and I've never been anywhere near that level, obviously, but they have the backup quarterback with the starting offensive line, starting running back, starting tight ends against starting defensive line, inside linebackers, outside linebackers, and maybe a safety or two. That's called inside run. Some people were, it's a classic setup, right? Sometimes it's referred as 9-on-7. So 9 for the offense being the 5 offensive linemen, quarterback, fullback, tailback, and then tight end, 9-on-7, your front 7, your front defensive line, outside linebackers, and inside linebackers. Occasionally, depending on personnel group, it'll become 9-on-8, but it's rarely ever 9-on-9. The wide receivers and DBs are removed from it because Lamar is down there throwing to them, right? It's a classic setup. That's what we would expect for any football team from high school on up, the organization to maximize your time period. But on top of that, they were getting a lot of reps. They were getting a lot of reps on the inside run period. And then, of course, the cameraman would pan down to the one-on-ones with Lamar throwing. That's what we want to see if we're watching on the stream. I was impressed with how many reps they got and also how competitive they were, tightly contested. This looks like a very competitive team against each other. And I mean, they're giving each other work. I don't get to go to practice. I tried to sign up, 2 or 3 weeks ago, just like pretty much everybody else, but I was unable to acquire any practice tickets. I'm pretty sure that it's standard operating procedure for NFL teams, offenses and defenses to make each other better, but there just seemed to be real business-like quality about the group of guys, everyone that I saw out there in terms of how they were rotating and shuffling in, being supportive of one another after they made plays or if they got beat. I noticed when Simpson got beat on the wheel by Derrick Henry, defensive players came up to him and talked to him. I'm quite sure that they understood what was happening, that Kirkwood had picked or screened Simpson because of the coverage they were playing, man-to-man to the boundary. And Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, just being spectacular talents, were able to get it done, get it execute in that tight space into the boundary. I think that we've got a very unique team, not just from a talent standpoint, but in how they approach things. And getting to see them work in this stadium practice again, I don't get an opportunity to watch the team practice at all. Does it mean that we're going to go out there and blow out the Bills in week 1, right? I'm really not worried about them at all right now. That's way off into the distance. We're talking about the work that's being put in. And to me, having never coached anywhere near that level, like I said before, this looked really good to me. A lot of movement. Players were not standing around in one place. They used the entirety of the stadium. Drills were situated in a way that, like, you might have red zone stuff on the right hand side of the stadium. I refer to right hand side just from the camera angle that we generally got. 12 to 15 minutes later, there might be a special teams drill on the other side, and guys have to move. Guys have to go from one location to another. That's superior design because you don't want players standing around when they're not involved, and then suddenly having to jump into a drill and execute something with fast twitch muscle fiber when they haven't been active at all for a certain amount of time. I thought there was another level of organization here that I noticed, some dynamism, if you will, from and I nerd out on some of it. My apologies for that. You may not be interested, but I used to actually go live and watch some of my friends' teams practice preseason when I wasn't coaching, just to notice how things were structured and kind of give them some tips because it was one of the things I felt like I was good at. So this endeavor, the stadium practice, to be able to see it and keep an eye on the action and maybe the sideline and what's going on in another location. It was fun for me, and I was appreciative when the camera crew did actually kind of pan to another drill on the other end of the field. And like I said, those types of decisions are kind of fascinating for me. I get it that you may not nerd out in it the way that I do. I want to talk about a couple of the drill periods that we saw. I thought were interesting. I loved the time frame where the offense was working on only bunch formations for the entirety of maybe 10 or 12 minutes in a row. It was a dedicated period where every single offensive snap was out of the bunch. Sometimes it was to the right, sometimes it was to the left, but generally we're talking about to the field. So if the ball's on the right hash for the offense, the bunch set, the 3 receivers, is to the left. If the ball's on the left hash for the offense, the bunch set is to the field, to the right. Clearly that was scripted, right? And I think that there was probably this is a little bit of conjecture, but it comes from some of my experience. I think there was an opportunity for the defense there to be given the coverage call pre-snap, pre-alignment for the offense, I should say, and then either stay with that coverage or check out of it based on the bunch that was presented by the offense. Essentially, a scripted time period, obviously. but one where I suspect the defensive players, the secondary, had to go, okay, here's the look. This is the coverage that we're in based on the look slash formation. Should we stay in that coverage call or should we check out of it based on what coaches communicated earlier this morning or yesterday or in team meetings, obviously? For it to be a dedicated 10 or 12-minute period on bunch, I mean, I take notes on these things. That's how maniacal I am about it sometimes. For it to be a dedicated bunch period for 10 or 12 minutes in a row, it means to me that both sides, right, Todd Monken's offense and Zach Orr's defense, wanted to get work, either operating out of bunch sets 3x1 or dealing with it in the case of the defense and Zach Orr. Those design time periods are always fun to observe. And I wish that I really don't plan on doing so because I'm recording. I'm also putting together a video about Brent Urban for Monday. I also kind of wish that I could go back and kind of discern patterns out of it. Basically, okay, how did they line up? I wish we had the all 22 of the stadium practice. Selfish, right? I wish we could discern patterns out of it. What did they look like covering bunch the first play? And then the second play, when, if, did they, and then when did they, the defense, check out of a particular look and go to a secondary look? I think the time period there is dedicated towards that. It's the point, if you ask me, of having so much bunch in a time period. You're not just going to, like Wink Martindale, play man free against the bunch on every single time that you see it. I think you saw at least 3 or 4 different looks from a coverage standpoint. Moving on a little bit, no real way for me to make declarative statements for the offensive line for a lot of reasons. I'm keeping notes during the time period. Also, my attention is a little bit on the guys that I'm talking to in the Ravens Discord. I did, clearly notice, I think it was Rosengarten that false started on the first play of the entire practice. And then he got beat by Van Noy in a pass rush period to end practice, that little pass pro versus pass rush 5-on-4, if you will, to end practice for about 8 or 10 minutes. I loved that time period, right? Ending with a real competitive scenario that removes, all of your key position players and puts the O-line and D-line, interior D tackles as well, in a spotlight. Everyone's watching them completely and seeing who gets a win. Totally gives the idea that the Ravens are dedicated to as many 4-man rush opportunities as possible. Even saw a third outside linebacker slash edge defender mixed in. Initially, it was Kyle Van Noy. I think I even saw Tavius Robinson lined up inside one time, but I could be wrong about who that particular was. It's great to not have Lamar or your starting quarterback ever in those pass rush drills, where yes, the D-line knows they're not actually going to sack the quarterback, but stepping on feet, guys getting rolled up on, offensive linemen maybe falling down. I wonder what the percentage was that some of the offensive linemen were on in terms of effort level. Was it 100%? Was it 92? Was it 88? I'm not sure. Voorhees supposedly looked good. That was one of the statements in our Discord, which has like 88 people in it at this time. So like the power of having 88 sets of eyes observing for me is just a huge benefit. It gives me the opportunity to say things like this. Voorhees looked good, even though I wasn't able to really glean that from watching it because I'm typing and trying to document. I should have mentioned Keaton Mitchell's burst earlier. I thought it was pretty clear. He was with the third team guys for much of the day, and he was unfortunately on the field during the time period when the second team defense was really dominating the backup offensive guys. Running backs were rotated in and out. We did see D'Ernest Johnson and Brent Urban, in fact, on the field, which is really cool being as those guys just signed. But Keaton Mitchell, getting back to him for a moment, his burst and his commitment to his path was clear. He looks like a guy on a mission to me. Again, the first practice situation that I've been able to observe for an extended period of time, obviously. Talking about that second team defense, it was an 11-on-11 time period where the offense didn't present a single running play. So it was dedicated to pass plays. It was maybe 20 to 30 minutes into the practice. I thought the second team defense was everywhere. Multiple guys. Adisa Isaac, Peebles, the rookie D tackle, Hummel. I think it was Hummel and Buchanan, 40 and 35 or 35 and 40. Maybe I have it backwards. Mike Green as well. Huge potential there for Green to impact this team. And I mean in the preseason and in the regular season. How or if he can be ready to provide the same boost, the same devastating physicality that we saw a couple of times today. He had Green had a great wrong arm in the inside run period, the inside run setup, dedicated to run plays. I kind of called it 9-on-7 or 9-on-8 earlier. It forced the running back to bounce outside because Green, destroyed the kick out block. For what Baltimore has at the outside linebacker, edge defender position, right? Van Noy, Owe, T. Rob, and now adding Mike Green with Ojabo and Isaac. I'm extremely interested to see what he brings. I feel like he's a finisher. I feel like he's a dunker, to use a basketball analogy. And I don't do a great job of analogies unless it's basketball related, probably because how much time I spent playing basketball and coaching a little bit of it, playing it, and paying attention to the NBA. So I have a comparison finally for Mike Green. I have two. I'm going to give you the first one. I'm still going to hold off on the second one. And I really don't like this one. I hate it because of this player got suspended twice, and in fact had a quite disappointing career for given the talent that he has. It's an exclusionary comparison because if you're young, you won't get it, and that's Richard Dumas. He only played 3 years in the NBA because of suspension. Actually, suspended his rookie year and then suspended once again. Eventually, was out of the league. I'm certainly not trying to make that correlation at all, right? I'm talking about the supreme athleticism. That's the parallel. Someone that can totally transform a play and a game because of his explosiveness, his God given gifts, and the technical skills. That is what Mike Green has as a pass rusher. And from a Richard Dumas standpoint, he was a ridiculous athlete at 6'8, 6'9, someone that could elevate with the ball in his right hand and switch to his left hand and dunk on someone at the NBA level. Like, if you've never heard of him, go look him up. Richard Dumas, NBA Finals, Bulls. I think it was 93. He averaged like 16 points, 15.8 points per game against Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan on like 57% shooting. The point is, why I'm making this analogy, Mike Green is someone that we don't need to score. Defense, poor is where the analogy breaks down. We don't need to score. We don't need to play great defense. We don't need Mike Green, but he's someone that can just put us in another stratosphere because of the immense physical gifts and the technical pass rush skills that he has. Forgive me if all of that analogy was uninteresting to you. It was fun to see Brent Urban on the field so quickly. I mean, he could probably wake up and put on a Ravens uniform and contribute. There's one rep that he's in early. He just dominated either the right guard or right tackle. I don't know which O-line was in there, but he stopped the running back quickly. No full tackling, right? But there was a lot of contact, and they were in full pads, so not just in shell. So a little different from some other stadium practices. I thought Travis Jones absolutely dominated either the right guard, right tackle twice early on in a separate time period. I loved that inside run period, like I said, 9-on-7 or 9-on-8, because they were moving offensive personnel around, getting different guys in and out. I do want to talk about just what is ahead of us as fans in terms of paying attention to the preseason. Lamar was truly shocking to see the ball come out on time with the right trajectory, the right angle, if you will, with the right speed, and then great accuracy or location. I think maybe one throw was less than a yard off. He's totally in tune, in sync, right, with the receivers and everything. Rush, it's been said about him that he gets rid of the ball early, right, to mitigate the loss or the lack of velocity that he has. But I thought he was seeing things late today. I thought there was 3 times where the defense, whatever they did post-snap, Rush was unsure, and he just settled for a drag underneath. It was still productive, don't get me wrong. Also, Leary, I just didn't see as big of an arm from him as we heard about when he was drafted. Now, I will say this. There's a couple of long passes downfield. It might have been Rush. It might have been Leary. Those dark jerseys, and they're both, one of them's wearing 13 and one of them's wearing, I think, 15. Because of the lettering on the jerseys being in gold with some purple around it, it didn't really stand out boldly to me. And so it was difficult to tell, okay, was that Rush or was that Leary trying to push the ball downfield? So what's ahead of us as fans trying to watch the preseason for the next 3 or 4 weeks is watching Rush and Leary throw the football. So there's a lot to be said about that. Owe, I thought on 2 pass rushes showed the freak speed and burst that he's got. Van Noy, I thought, obliterated Rosengarten in the final drill as a pass rush versus pass pro. Roquan had one really great timed blitz. It was where Lamar kind of had to escape and then shovel it out to the flats. Roquan would have been in another situation trying to tackle Lamar, similar to Kyle Hamilton, like I talked about earlier. Owuzie, to me, or Awuzie looks smooth. I've got no idea on some of the completions. Maybe balls were thrown to him and completed, but I thought he looked great. Very under control. And when I'm looking at things kind of off screen on the side of the field, it looks to me like Awuzie is kind of commanding things and really getting guys lined up, or at least communicating after the play, between plays, on how things should be done. But I might be reading too much into that. In terms of the overall reps and how they were disseminated, I thought there was some hidden in plain sight genius. And what I mean by that is there was time periods where Lamar, Derrick Henry, and others would kind of kick things off, maybe 4 or 5 snaps, and then would give way to second string or third string quarterback / running back. At one point in time, there was 2 consecutive offensive series, one by the first group, the starters, and one by the second string. And I thought the starters got like 7 or 8 plays, and the second string guys had like 15. And so what I say, genius hidden in plain sight, is they're giving us a little bit of what we want to see: Lamar, Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, DeAndre Hopkins, and then saying, okay, we've seen enough here. Let's get these guys off the field, mitigate any chance of injury whatsoever, and let the second and third string guys actually take the higher percentage of the reps throughout the day. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Couple more notes here. Forgive me if this one gets boring with no film. I used to do screenshots for the stadium practice and kind of talk about things. I don't think we really need to do that at this point. TJ Tampa is a guy I want to see play in the preseason, or not, regular season as well. Going to have a difficult time, right, getting in front of Wiggins, Awuzie, Jair Alexander, and Marlon Humphrey. I want to find out what TJ Tampa can do. Today was very inconsistent. It's obvious. I think he gave up a long catch down the right sideline, and then also had a clear DPI on, I think it was Anthony Miller, number 6, in the end zone. I'm looking forward to see how Tampa plays on Thursday night against the Colts, a game that I'll cover and do a reaction video for. The last point that I want to make, I guess maybe 2 more, the left tackle, right tackle situation for the backups. It's pretty clear now. Vincent is the backup left tackle, and then Note Boom at right tackle. I thought Note Boom looked kind of smooth. Health and availability has been his large issue throughout his career. But being a backup, we don't need him to be healthy that often. But the unfortunate thing, or what I think is a little perplexing about the signing, is if we do need him, that's when we need him to be healthy because he's playing. Getting back to Vincent a little bit, large, big dude out there at left tackle, seemed to play well today. Combative, competitive in the pass rush drill. I liked what I saw. I do want to point out that he's in a high stance. Now, the stance I'm referring to, I noticed more so later on in the pass rush period. There's a real lack of ankle flexion and knee bend in his stance compared to everyone else. A stark contrast. And look, maybe he'll be really good out of that stance, right? You can call me old-fashioned if you want, but what I've been around, what I've seen, is getting in a good stance, good ankle flexion, good knee bend, every day, every rep, every snap, will create better ankle flexion, better flexibility, better knee bend in the future. You'll be more comfortable in that stance. I wonder if we're letting him play out of that high. Two thoughts, 2 ideas, possibilities. 1, we're letting him play out of that high-ass stance just on pass plays. Okay, fine, right? I mean, the left tackle for the Bills does it, and he's successful. He gets glowing reviews, right? Maybe it suits Vincent. Another thought that came to me, and I don't know if I'm really committed to this one, is we're letting him stay in that high-ass stance because we don't think he can get in an actual better stance like everyone else was on the offensive line. And to me, that's not good for him long term. Let's handle problems now if he's not good, if he's not able to get in a really good stance. It's also possible, like I said, first possibility is the one that I tend to sway more towards, which is he's only in that stance in a pass-only time period, known passing situation, 3rd and 8. And so he adjusts, right, from either a run-pass stance, trying not to give it away pre-snap, or a known passing situation. Hopefully I talked about all that in a way that makes sense. Maybe you noticed it as well. In any case, the tight ends were heavily involved today. Andrews, Kolar, even I think the new guy, 17, Cup. He actually had a fumble against the second-string defense. I thought the second-string defense forced a couple of late fumbles that really wouldn't have occurred If it was a live game situation, because guys, Keaton Mitchell was one of them, Cup was the other, had kind of geared down, but fun day. This one was fun for me to produce. I chose not to do any screenshots and kind of explain any plays. If that reduced the enjoyability level or how much you were willing to sit around and listen to my thoughts, my apologies for that. Well, this was a nice appetizer for Thursday, except the difference is, against the Colts, we won't get to watch any of the starters at all. Indianapolis is going to bring that 11 personnel run threat that really the Eagles kind of brought in the preseason the last 2 years. We weren't prepared for it last year at all, and even the season before. The 11 personnel run game, dealing with that, especially to the boundary. So I'm looking for a better plan from our defensive staff in terms of dealing with the 11 personnel run game and the associated play action stuff that's built off of it. We do get to hear about, read about, speculate about 2 joint practices leading up to Thursday's preseason opener. In any case, you guys feel free to let me know in the comment section what you thought of the things I chose to highlight. Of course, I probably missed some stuff. There's a couple hours worth of presentation there in terms of the press conference afterwards, which was very short, very unusual because the audio was messed up for that as well. If I missed anything, feel free to let me know in the comment section. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy my summer review/reaction to the Ravens stadium practice, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.